Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Joe Buskens. This is our family's boat shop. Today we are in episode 9 of our mold build for our hardtop for our 29-foot center console that we built here in our family's boat shop. And it's pretty exciting today because we are moving right on to the build of this thing. So the mold has been completed. We've been working on it and the plug for several weeks. So if you're new to the channel and haven't seen that and want to learn in depth how to build a mold, this is the channel for it. But as far as wax, I'm going to back up a little bit on what we did. We did 7 coats total of a mold release specific wax so that the gel coat we're spraying will not stick to the mold. That is very important. Also important to remember that when you're building something like this, we are not using a waxed gel coat. There's not going to be any wax. Matter of fact, it's real common, like for example, when you buy gel coat, this will say without wax, which is what you would want. If you were on your last coat and trying to finish the interior of your boat and you wanted a tack-free surface, you would use gel coat with wax. Now, sometimes, again, there is some confusion. You're like, well, I don't want the gel coat to stick to the mold. The mold release wax is the wax that keeps that gel coat from sticking. But you do want it to remain tacky so that the fiberglass and the layers of laminate you're gonna add. So I know that's a lot to absorb there, but I'll try to skim through it. So what we've done, we went ahead and mixed up our custom color. We've got kind of a medium gray, and that is the same color as our boat that we're building. You can come in on in a little bit tighter there. It's the same color gray as our boat, and we got that by using a light gray and some black gel coat to get a custom color. Prior to loading it in these little cups, we ran it through some screen. Now this is one of those things you can get from your local hardware store, and it works quite well because gel coat is quite thick and sometimes it's hard to pour through your traditional little conical shaped strainers, but you want to be sure your gel coat is nice and clean. So we've thoroughly waxed the mold. I've blown it off to be sure it's nice and clean. We've got our air compressor on. We made sure there's no water in the air lines. We've kind of got everything staged and ready. So we're really close. We're fixing to jump in there and start spraying. But you got to remember, you're always going to add catalyst. And this is going to be, we like the Norox, the MEKP 925. That's going to be a high strength. And it's quite hot today. It's well into the 80s. So the hotter the temperatures are, the less catalyst you're going to use when you're mixing this stuff up. So if it's real cold outside, you can go closer to 2%. When it's real hot outside, we run closer to 1.25%. So I've went ahead and marked off here because it's tricky sometimes to see how much those little marks. I like somewhere around 10 to 12 cc's for this amount. Now this is not quite a full quart, but we needed this to kick along too because we're trying to get this done this morning because we got some other stuff to do this afternoon. So catalyst goes in, some eye protection, a real good idea, a good mask, and a good thorough mix. Very, very important. If you don't mix it thoroughly, you are going to have issues. And a drill mixer is money well spent versus just your little wooden paddles and whatnot. You are definitely going to want. Now I had somebody the other day comment, I like to run it one direction and turn it and run the other way. And he said, you got to be careful about that. It'll unmix it. And that's not really how it works. It's okay to run the mixer one direction and then the other direction. In my opinion and in my experience, I've done it this way a bunch. And it's worked for me. Now we don't want to introduce a lot of air into the gel coat either, so I'm trying to keep it at a moderate speed. I'm going to turn it the other direction once again. There you go. You can see we got a good swirl going on. I would say for close to a minute or so. But remember, as soon as you add the catalyst, the clock starts ticking and you really only have about 10, maybe 12 minutes to get this stuff out of the gun, or else you're going to have problems. Good to keep an acetone bucket handy and a brush. Knock off the bulk of it. just gonna leave that in that little container. Now we're gonna get a little bit of airflow going today. We've got a big open shop, a good respirator. We're wearing the 3M, that's the 3M Secure Click. I love this respirator, it's been real good to me. I'll be sure to have a link down below in the video for all the products that we're using. But eye protection, a good mask. We're using our little dump gun or cup gun. Get that on there nice and snug. Seats in there. This locks down. All right, so come on over. We're gonna do a little test shot. I like it pretty good. Now you gotta start with the gun in the upward position, and then you get ready to shoot downward. So you notice before I start, I've got the gun pointed up, and then we're gonna tilt it down. That'll save it from giving a big glob of gel coat. All right, so here we go, folks. I'll turn the air pressure up a little bit. There we go. We're running out just that quick. Just that fast. So we're gonna run right into another cup. We'll let that sit right there. About 12 cc's or so. Want to clean some of the old residue off of there so we don't have the catalyzed gel coat in the new gel coat. Not a bad idea to have a helper with this kind of stuff. Good tight seal on it. I like to hold it just like so. You should be good. All right, come on over there, cameraman. just that quick. Gonna do another. Gotta move right along. It's very important. Have all your stuff staged and ready. You don't want to have any hiccups. All right, here we go. So the first coat I sprayed lengthwise. This time I'm going to spray crossways. All right. Now, I think we're gonna... That was pretty darn close, but honestly, I'd like a little bit more coverage. And I went ahead and I strained a little extra here, and I have it ready to go. And I am going to go straight to just adding a little bit more. I'm going to use the same batch here will be just fine, I do believe. Sometimes it just takes a little bit more than you anticipate, and that's okay, kind of to be prepared for that. I'm going to go just with a half batch. This time about 5 cc's. My battery did go dead on my drill on that last one, so I am going to go old school. Just mix this up kind of old school. You can do it if you don't have a drill mixer, that's fine, you can make it work. I also have another drill. I tell you what, I've also had a couple comments on these craftsman tools. You know, they are not the most expensive. They're available at your local Lowe's, but I've had actually really good success with them. Not everybody, you don't need the most expensive tools to do a project like this. If you're on a budget, I know a lot of folks are, and these are readily available. Most people are going to have a Lowe's or a Home Depot somewhere nearby that they can source from. And that first batch is already starting to tack off underneath that lid there. So things are moving along rapidly. Hot weather definitely amplifies things. think we're good. That was kind of hectic there for a minute, that last batch. Maybe I should have had an extra one set up. Now, one thing I like about these little cup guns versus an expensive spray rig is cleanup is quite easy, and you don't have a bunch of intricate parts or valves or anything. That little nozzle. And again, I'll put a link. I believe that's an ES manufacturing or GS or ES. These are pretty readily available, and I would recommend having one of these. So cleanup is another thing. People are always asking about cleanup, and acetone is kind of our go-to product. It's highly flammable, so it is important to be aware of that. Now, sometimes what I'll do, if I can't get to thoroughly clean it in the moment, just dunk it in a bucket of acetone. Now, I also get a lot of questions about applying Gelcoat. Do you have to have one of those little cup guns? And the answer is no. Gelcoat can be brush applied into a mold if you want to, but in my opinion, it's worth the investment. If you can get a little cup gun, it's a good idea. So I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here. The brush is the acetone, and this should be ready for a skin coat, which is a crucial step in building a quality part. That's coming up in a second. All right, folks, we are rolling out our layer of 1 ounce CSM. It's been about 1 hour since we sprayed the gel coat, and there's no color coming off on my finger there, and it's slightly tacky. So we get that question a lot too, man. It's relatively fast. This stuff cures pretty quick. So it's like as soon as it doesn't come off on your finger, light tack to it, especially in high temperature. If it's cold, you may even want to wait 4 or 5 hours, but we're about 1 hour in, and we had went ahead and pre-cut our mat and kind of get an idea of how we want this to fit. Basically, we want a little bit of overlap on the edges, and we're gonna I'm gonna kind of tear this to fit just a little bit. And that's the thing about this 1 ounce mat. It's quite easy to come in here and just tear those edges. We are gonna come back with a strip along the edges as well. Give it a little more thickness there. Just tuck it right into those corners. That looks super nice. We'll do the same thing up here. I want to make sure it's tucked into the corner. It's okay to trim a little bit. We still want to be a little delicate with the edges though. The gel coat is more or less dry to the touch, but it's not hard, and so it's not going to take any abuse. So you would not want to hit it with a hard item or drag anything across the edge. A little bit of that excess off. All right, so now what I like to do in an application like this is we want to get plenty of resin underneath, and I like to peel this back halfway on itself, and that's going to ensure that the positioning stays the same. So we're going to go ahead, y'all come on over here. We're using a very high caliber vinyl ester resin. So it's a laminating resin, which means it's going to stay tacky, and the vinyl ester basically gives you the strength of an epoxy, kind of the workability of a polyester. You got to add a catalyst to it. The ratios of the catalyst are going to kind of depend on how fast you want it to cure, but we want this initial skin coat to kick pretty dang fast. So we need somewhere around probably 15 to 18 cc's or more when we're doing this. We want this to go pretty quick. We want it to tack off pretty fast because it can eat into the gel coat if you don't get to moving along. And oh, as a side note, Fiberglass Warehouse, they are offering a discount code for Fish Bump TV viewers. You guys can save a pretty good bit of money. Same with their gel coat, the wax that we use prepping the mold. Fiberglass Warehouse there, folks. They will help you out. So let's go on over. I went ahead and just poured up nearly a quart. It's gonna go right into our pan. Went ahead and got our rollers ready. We got hard rollers, soft rollers. And I'm gonna go pretty spicy. We're gonna go up around 15 cc's or maybe even a little bit more. Seems like the vinyl ester might take just a little more catalyst to get it to move along than the polyester does in some cases. And we are using a dyed MEKP, so we can see, you can zoom in here and you can see these swirls. I want it to be thoroughly mixed. I like to kind of go around the perimeter. And you can see now, you're completely sure that it's mixed, and it kind of changes colors altogether from that purple, I don't even know what, that's almost a burgundy now. You get a definite color change for sure. And we're gonna go with a big roller, cover a lot of ground. Now again, you wanna be careful about not hitting the surfaces with the metal parts, because it can damage your gel coat. These big rollers allow you to put on a pretty good bit of material pretty rapidly. I like them. But sometimes you need a small one for the tighter spaces. So kind of just good idea to maybe have both of them prepped and ready. Hot weather is nice as far as knowing your material is going to cure, but it definitely puts another layer of stress on you, because this stuff waits for no one once you kick the catalyst to it. All right, so real gently beautiful. And it should saturate right through, especially that one layer. It's gonna wet out pretty easy. Just that quick, we have used up a quart to get ready. Now this again would be a nice time if you had a helper. You could go ahead and start another batch. Get that in the pipeline. Come on over here a little bit closer there, my man. There you go. Now a lot of times what I like to do before I mix another batch, make sure the brush is completely clear so you don't have any of that catalyzed resin in your mixing brush. And I like to try to get as much resin out of the roller as I can, even if you're not getting full wet out. I want to try to clear some of that resin before you start your next batch. This is a pretty crucial step. Again, this is what we call a skin coat. Generally it's just one, sometimes two layers of CSM. On a bigger part, you would probably want 2 or 3 layers, but on this one, weight is going to be a big factor as well. You want this T-top strong but light. So here we go with another quart. About 15 cc's, maybe a little more. We got that out pretty quick. We do want this to kick. Eye protection, and honestly right now a respirator would be a good idea for you folks. We do have fans running today in a big open shop. We got one fan kind of pushing air from the back and one pulling air out. And we have a westerly breeze blowing today. So I find, like, if you have a shop and if you got a prevailing wind one way or the other that morning, don't fight it. You know, if you've got a west wind, blow across the shop in a westerly direction. All right. We want a good saturated coat on this skin coat. You do not want to skimp on the resin at this phase. This is where, if you don't pay attention to details, you are going to get bubbles. You're going to get bubbles between the gel coat and the laminate, and over time, those bubbles are going to chip. And that's where you see a lot of problems, a lot of boats. If you're built in a big factory, sometimes the time is not taken to really get that skin coat rolled down thoroughly and really wet out. It's also very common to use a vinyl ester resin in a skin coat because it acts as a really good moisture and water barrier. So a lot of your higher end boats are gonna have. So what I'm probably gonna do at this point, switch over to a smaller roller that I can get through these corners a little better. You don't want to be too rough, just firm, not too aggressive. You don't want to go clanking and banging. It's okay to use a gloved hand, and we're looking for little bubbles. Like there's a little bubble right there, just a little touch, and that gets that stuck down. You don't want to be skimpy on the resin. All right, so I still got to move pretty fast. I'm not going to do a ton of detail work, but we're going to go ahead and flip this back on itself. Gonna go back to the big roller. Same deal. Plenty of resin underneath that edge. Honestly, it is easier if your temps are in like the 70s or so, low 80s. To mid 70s, pretty good place. Even the 60s, sometimes you're just gonna have to kick a little more catalyst to your batch though, move things along. I'm excited to have a hardtop, man. Fishing down here in the summertime is pretty tough without some shade. Not very pleasant. All right, grab that corner. There you go. Having a helper sure is nice. There we go. Beautiful. Just like that. I'm going to start right here on this edge because that's the first resin we put down. Want to be sure we get that down because sometimes it can start to kick ahead of you. Kind of want to do it in order. Well, again, we want to get this roller kind of clear. Pick up some of those loose hairs. Now there is another little roller that a lot of times, again, if you have a helper, a little grooved roller, a little bubble buster, there. And that is one of the key elements, especially right in these edges. Yeah, right in these edges, you're usually gonna find that's where your bubbles are gonna wanna be. Really focus on that. You don't want to push too hard or it'll bruise the glass. You can also come back with a brush. We always call it dabbing in our family. Kind of hard to get one of those hard rollers in there, but corners like this, right there on those edges, are where you are going to have problems. If problems are going to happen, that's where it's going to be. So we just want to make really sure we got plenty in there. No bubbles. Bubbles are bad. Good having an arsenal of materials and different rollers you can use. There's not really just one size fits all, in my opinion. Back to the hard roller. Just nice and methodical and uniform. You want to cover everything, but time management. Time management, very important. If you don't manage your time, you're gonna definitely have problems. And it is good, again, I keep mentioning having a helper, but somebody walking around behind you and looking for little bubbles, looking for little flaws, looking for missed spots. Now's a good time to tell everybody thank you so much. If you've been following the channel, it means a lot to me. If you haven't already subscribed, like, share, comment, and we've been asking as a big favor, anybody with different social media platforms, if you could share on Facebook, Instagram, other boating forums. The more the channel grows, the more of this kind of content we can do, and can't do it without y'all's support. So thank you so much. All right, very good. I think we're pretty much, maybe my cameraman can kind of zoom in there on that. That looks about right. All the way around those parameters. We're looking for a good bubble-free wet out. I'm gonna get this roller nice and dry and get ready to do the second half. You can see this roller's kind of going green. We've gotten most of the resin out of that one. Try to get the resin out of this one. There you go. This vinyl ester is amazing stuff. It's one of my favorite. A lot of folks have never even heard of vinyl ester. You hear polyester, which is kind of on the bottom end of most resins. It doesn't mean it's bad, but that's just the most common. It's the least expensive. The vast majority of the boats built out there are going to be polyester hulls. We get that question a lot. A lot of folks talk about compatibility, but more than likely your boat is a polyester hull unless it is a high-end performance boat or a very lightweight craft. It is more than likely going to be polyester. As far as compatibility goes, the vinyl ester works beautifully over that. Matter of fact, if you need to do a repair like below the water line, vinyl ester is a great option for that. It bonds very tenaciously like epoxy. But what's great is you can put gel coat over it with no problem. Lots of debate in the boating community about, can you put gel coat over epoxy? And generally, people in the business would say no. There can be compatibility issues. Some videos out there will suggest you can do it, but most people that build boats, vinyl ester would be the way to go if you want a premium resin and be able to put gel coat over it. And y'all, I apologize, it is hot. I'm dripping. All right, here we go. Gonna kind of start just nice, systematically. You don't want to jump all over the place. I'm trying to do this in like a search grid so that you know you got everything wet out real well. We'll do all the big stuff first and come back and hit some of the smaller stuff. Once you get some resin on it, it'll give it a moment to kind of melt in there. Good. Pretty happy to have this happening. Corners are always a little trickier. Yep, zoom right in here. Sometimes stuff will want to kind of pucker up. You can use the brush to kind of push it where you want it. A little bit of dab will do you. A little dab will do you, that's for sure. You're just looking for bubbles, looking for glass fibers that are sticking up and out. Sometimes a little high intensity work light is a ticket for these little detailed areas. Like that would be a problem right there if you missed that little bit. And that's where doing everything just real systematically. You start at one end and don't jump all over the place. Like just work from front to back or side to side. Having a person, another set of eyes. We were talking about that even being out on the boat, having people watching and looking. One person may see something that the other person may not. We certainly don't want to waste any of that good vinyl ester, so I'm going to go ahead and I have a little bit more left in the pan. Try to spread that out, get it everywhere. Some of the best resin I've ever worked with, and I've grown up, my family, we've grown up using all kind of different resins, and when I was growing up we didn't use much vinyl ester, but it is some of my favorite to work with. Workability is very nice. Always looking for dry spots. All right, so we're gonna go back to our little hard roller. Now, one little trick you can use sometimes, this was my brother's suggestion to me. He showed me this little trick. Your Gatorade bottle with a little bit of acetone, and to not waste the acetone, I'm squirting it into my 5-gallon bucket that we keep all the time. That's how we run and clean. You can always slosh your brush around in there, but I want good clean material in there. So a little squirt, put the lid back on. Remember folks, highly flammable, so acetone is no joke. back, and we're going to do a real quick, and again, it's very methodical. Your skin coat is crucial. If you have a bubble, it's probably going to result in a chip in the gel coat at some point. Now once your resin starts to tack off or cure, it'll kind of tell you to stop rolling on it, because it'll tend to want to cling or roll up on the roller. And that is not what you want. So if you're rolling along and all of a sudden the resin starts to act up and stick to your roller, it is probably time to just stop. So into our wash down bucket, and I'm going to do one more walk around with your little brush and just look for little details. Crucial work right here. Now folks have also been asking about our project, our 21-foot project, Blazer boat. We're gonna start work on that as soon as this video is done. And so we'll be starting back to work on that big project here pretty soon. I know a lot of folks are eager to see transoms and floors and stringers and whatnot. So you guys be sure to stay tuned, because even after this build, that is what we plan on starting on. All right, I think that's about it. I hope you guys get an idea. You want this material saturated, but you don't want it just soaking wet and all kind of resin floating everywhere. Certainly don't want a dry layup. But at this point in this temperature, this stuff is probably done. We're gonna give it, you could give it 2 or 3 hours and get ready to laminate, maybe even less. But I think that's gonna be it for this episode. Next week, we'll start actually putting more laminate and core in there. But for right now, I just wanna thank you guys so much for your support of the channel, watching, viewing. Again, subscribe, like, comment, share. Other social media platforms or boating forums or fishing forums that you could share would be greatly appreciated. It's Captain Joe here with Island Marine Charters, my fantastic cameraman working hard behind the scenes. And as always, we will catch you guys next time out.